morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Slava, you want to start us off?
Yeah.
He's the kid who's not paying attention in class.
Good morning, Jonathan. And everybody else. Matt.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Spencer and JT. Casey.
Howdy.
Full house today.
No, Matt doesn't get a mention. Slava's decided to oust him.
I have been berated.
You did not say Matt. Berate him. Berate him.
And Matt. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pity recognition.
Chick-fil-A, my pleasure.
Are we all like in the same positions? Am I in the top left of everybody's screen?
No.
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 Rats.
Everybody's in the top left of their own screen.
Because like this would be Slava right here for me.
Everyone's the main character of their own screen.
Yeah, it's me, Casey, Jonathan, JT, and Spencer. Matt's not even on my screen.
He actually just put he put a post-it note on top of Matt's video. Matt's not here.
Sorry, Matt, but you've been voted off the island.
Oh, well, I guess I can go back to bed.
Blame the Russians.
Damn Russians.
So, if you haven't guessed it, we are finishing up Underlord with part 3. And most of you, let's see, Matt read this for the first time. Casey and Slava, you guys are going play by play, but Matt finished the series. Spencer, JT, and myself have all finished the series. And we know what's to come. But 2 of our people here do not know what is going to happen after Underlord. So for them, it was a more interesting, tense ride. Do you guys want to speak to that at all, Casey and Slava?
Slava, want to go first? It's your podcast.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a tense ride, but as I mentioned in the previous episode, this is my favorite book thus far. I enjoyed, again, particularly Yerin's arc in this story. But I'm enjoying the series as a whole tremendously, so happy that we're doing this.
For me, it's wasn't necessarily quite so tense. I figured Yerin would probably live through it, but I didn't know how she was going to live through it. So the point of tension there was how close she's going to get to dying until she actually does die.
Is he gonna do worse, like Breaking Bad or Sanderson? Just keep pushing her closer to the edge and see if she can survive, or is he gonna be a little merciful and bring her back out quickly?
All up in the cards.
All up in the cards. Spencer, you've read Underlord how many times? JT, same question.
Yeah, I've read it twice now. I read it originally, I think about a year ago, maybe a little over a year. And then as we were getting ready for the podcast, I figured it would probably be best for me to read it a second time just so I have a good grasp of what's going on. So just finished it last night, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember this being one of my more favorite books of the series. Yeah, the tension with Yerin at the end was definitely, even on the reread, it's just like, even almost had me questioning, even though I know what's going to happen, it's like, is she actually going to live? Like, how is she even going to get out of this? I don't know. I don't see how he's going to be able to write his way out of this one. But yeah, it was good. It was good tension.
I have only read it once, but I read it fairly recently. It was this year. So I do have a couple of places in the book that I go back to every once in a while just to relive that scene.
Oh, like what?
Usually it's the very end scene, which we'll talk about later.
Fair enough.
Well, all right. As we set off on today's side quest, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. But before we get into the book, because this is the first time we have 6 guests on all together, I think all of our guests except one on together, what are some fun facts you guys can share with us in the audience? Casey, would you like to start us off?
Sure thing. So I've actually taken up a bit of pipe smoking recently with some guys. Pretty interesting, especially the conversations. So far, I've been on the past 2 episodes of the Cradle saga and 1 Warbreaker episode.
That was a fun one.
I enjoyed that one.
That was a fun one.
Have you changed your mind about Vivenna?
No. No hesitation.
Nope, not even a second.
Feels pre-planned.
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 Oh yeah. You guys are just coming against my gal.
Oh, yeah.
I still don't understand how you like her so much.
Oh, you're talking about us. I thought you were talking about the beef that you had with me about Ravenna.
Oh no, that was organic.
All right. JT, how about you?
Well, sorry, one sec.
What?
I feel like
That
I had
was
to do it.
forceful.
No.
A lot of torque there. You might need
gotta
to
turn off-
check
I gotta-
yourself.
I had to turn off the sound pad.
You gotta turn off the sound pad.
It's too much temptation.
Take the power away.
Apparently.
Slava, you doing all right?
I'm fine. Oh, okay.
Not anymore, he's not. I think you got a little on him.
Future Slava, leave that in. Leave that.
Yeah, I think you got a little on me.
Slava, on
Okay.
your left side, there's a little bit of brown. I don't know. Don't think it's coffee. Doesn't look like coffee. It looks too viscous.
Too thick?
Yeah.
So I'm JT. It's a big lover of cultivation novels, especially of the original Chinese ones. Fun facts about me. I didn't think of a fun fact.
Wow. You're the most fun guy here.
I'm on chapter 3000 now of the first cultivation novel that I ever started reading.
Ooh.
Yeah, they really go hard on length with these novels, apparently.
They're really short chapters, but there's a lot of them.
Like how short? Like a couple paragraphs or like a couple sentences?
No, 1,600 words per.
So like a blog post, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
A Word
calculated
document.
it at one point. I told you guys this last time. The first 2 books were 5 times longer than the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do these long, epic stretches. So it's not super detail focused, but the breadth of what you get is massive.
How do they keep all that information straight? If you're on
They
chapter
don't.
3000,
And they don't.
okay. Okay, fair enough.
They don't care.
Oftentimes you'll find an author forgets about something that he wrote about earlier. Oh yeah, he did pick up that item 700 chapters ago. And the readers just have to be the ones to remind him, hey, what about this thing? Oh yeah.
And suddenly in the
Forget
next
about
chapter
that.
it gets mentioned again.
Every once in a while, yeah, it'll.
Wild.
Now he uses it.
Sounds like he needs an editor team like Sanderson's got. Keep everything straight.
Or a wiki.
Yeah, or a
Both.
wiki.
It's the thing is that it's not a huge moneymaker because they don't print these. It's all on the web. And usually it's like a pay by subscription model where it's, oh yeah, you get access to all the stuff I've written for, $5 a month.
I see. That makes more sense.
I would love to have a hard copy of it, but I've never seen it made.
Netflix for books.
Book flicks.
Bookflix. You can't get new chapters if you buy a hard copy, JT. In
It's true. I'd like to still have it just in case.
case it disappears off the internet.
Essentially.
They just send him a hard copy, no pages. Open it and it says see hyperlink.
Maybe one day it
It's just the cover
disappears.
with the hyperlink inside
Yeah,
one
that's,
page.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah. Like a nice hardcover that's a big, thick leather bound piece. You just open it, there's no
Yeah.
paper.
Well, who knows if it one day disappears behind the firewall.
The great Chinese firewall.
Are you reading them in Chinese?
No, thankfully I do. I read the translations.
Okay. All right. It's about to be real impressed.
How accurate are the translations? Are they like
Depends.
like manga usually takes, depending on the manga, it takes however long to translate. That's because of people not caring too much. But for these, how long does it take? Is it like a 1-to-1? They have 2 teams writing one in Chinese, and then these guys just translate for different languages, or
In this case, there are no official translators for basically anything.
Google Translate.
Because
Fan translation.
well, so what they end up doing is there's just passion projects somebody has. I want to translate these novels because I like them so much.
interesting, very interesting.
So, Matt, what's your fun fact?
Let's see, my fun fact. So for Halloween, I'm a big Star Wars nerd. Everybody who's listening to the podcast already knows if they've listened to my episodes. Big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
I applied. Came up through Instagram for like you could win a free lightsaber. Just sign up for your email. Blah 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 blah. So I signed up, and I won.
Really?
And I got
Really?
a
Congrats.
$1,200 lightsaber in the mail, and it is the
Dang.
one you guys saw sitting on the bed on Monday. And that brings my total lightsaber count, I think, up to 8.
Wow.
And other than my guns, those are all the most valuable possessions in my house.
Wow.
Wow.
And the house. Don't forget the house. You got equity in the house. Come
I
on.
have
true.
equity in the house, right? But if the house gets turned upside down, whatever falls, I am putting that category into.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I won a lightsaber. It's really cool. I got a baby coming in January.
Congratulations.
A lot of fun stuff going on in my life this year. So I'm just happy to be back on the podcast and Slava and Mai's podcast.
Yes.
Actually, you haven't listened to these episodes, which is apparent to me, but Spencer actually took over.
That's true.
You told me that last time, but it's still Slava. It's Jonathan and Spencer sometimes, but most of the time it's Matt and Slava.
No. Spencer literally did a takeover. He booted you. We talked all about it on that episode. You'll have to
We
go
did.
listen to it.
Yep. It's no longer your podcast. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, man. Rats. I guess it's a single man's game.
And that's why, for my fun fact, I don't really have one, because you guys, if you're listening to these, I've been on enough of these episodes. You know me already. What more do you need to know?
Social security number, bank account, how much you got.
PIN.
Are you willing to give everyone a $5 coffee?
What's the last 6 digits on your credit card?
That's right. These are all the questions people want to know.
Yeah, super personal questions.
Ooh, who's your main in Smash Bros? That's a real question.
That is a great question. I actually kind of flip-flop between Lucas and Pyramithra.
I knew the answer to that question. I just wanted everybody else to groan collectively and be like, Lucas.
More sword users on the Lucas.
I like Mithra and Pyra.
They're fun to play, but I'm a Sephiroth and Ike. Ike was my main back in, I think, the second one he was in, but Ike has been my main for a long time. I also love Ganon. I like the heavy hitters. I really like the heavy hitters.
Cringe edgelord.
The Edgelord, yep.
Donkey Kong.
I lost at a couple tournaments to Donkey Kong for whatever reason, and I don't like him.
No one
at all.
expects the banana.
Yeah.
What's his stupid clapping the ground and then
Oh,
his
yep.
big smack, and it's just like, what the fuck? It's so fast, and every other movie does it slow. It's just, yeah. Anyway, Smash Bros.
I particularly like his taunt where he just looks at the camera and goes,
Yeah, just grab up throw to up air.
Aerial dodge, and then I like the, what was it? I think you could do it with two characters in the first one. I think it was Bowser and it was Donkey Kong. You could put them on your back, and then you could just hop off the map.
Oh, yeah.
Kamikaze him. I did it with my little sister.
Yeah, Bowser has a move where you can grab
he
them,
picks them up and
picks them
slams
up, and
down,
then slams them down. But if you're on the edge of the map, you can.
Yep, that's what.
I mean, you lose a stock too, but if you're
Yeah.
one stock ahead, you could beat someone like that.
Yep.
yeah, or you're high damage and you don't care.
That too.
So no honor in this group. Got it.
Absolutely not.
None.
Not when it comes to Smash Bros.
Victory or death.
So I have a side quest. I went to a wedding. I was the best man at a buddy's wedding, and so I had to write a speech. And he's a big Star Wars fan too. I got his goat during the speech because his wife, now wife, but that time fiance, has never seen up until that point any Star Wars. So he sat her down and they watched the original 3 and then the prequels. And so one of my bits in the speech was, "Oh, Stephanie, well, that's her name. You and I have something in common. I haven't watched any Star Wars either." He goes, "But I hear the next one that's coming out is really fun. It's where Emperor Picard needs to get the TARDIS to Hogwarts in time so the hobbits can defeat the Cylons." And everybody laughed and she laughed and he was just sitting there going like, "Damn it.
He was so ashamed.
I have made a mistake." Because him and I have talked Star Wars, and Matt, you were on all the Star Wars episodes that we did. I have enough information because of Star Wars being in the zeitgeist, so I can talk at length about it, maybe not as a super fan at all, but I read 2 books, and I watched bits and pieces of the movies. And I don't think he saw that coming. It was a fun time for me.
That's awesome.
That is a good one. Casey, why don't you give us a quick overview of the plot while we keep moving forward here?
All right. So, summarize. We've still got the threat of the Dread Gods slowly waking back up, hanging over everyone's heads. And so the monarch of the various monarchs, I should say, of Cradle have decided to host the Uncrowned Tournament again, which involves invites to all the Underlords. However, Lindon and Yerin aren't Underlords yet. And so they need to beef up beforehand. Thankfully, they get invited to Nightwheel Valley, a very high tier area for cultivation resources. in which they and Mercy and Ethan and Orthos all get together and have a jolly good time trying to acquire all the stuff that they can while they're there. Lindon basically had the entirety of Matewheel Valley in his pockets at one point,
Seemed that way.
but they eventually get forced out because, surprise, surprise, Charity is holding a grudge and decides to send the entire Second Kingdom against them. What was it, the Sacian Kingdom? And forces them out. They decide, you know what? We need to make one last Hail Mary to get in there, especially because Yerin ends up damaging her, what was it, lifeline?
Mm-hmm.
The confrontation with them by feeding it into her blood shadow, creating a clone. So now we have blood clone jutsu going on. For one last Hail Mary, they managed to break into, well, it's not really break in. They were let in, essentially, by Charity through Mercy. And it ends up in a large confrontation between the two sides again, after which, well, let's just say that it didn't go too well for the Sacian Kingdom, losing one of their princes, and Lindon and Yerin both advancing to Underlord on their own power, and Mercy advancing because she dies. Yes, that makes sense in context.
Sacrificial lamb.
Yep. After that, they have a jolly good time celebrating their advancement to Underlord before suddenly Charity's back saying, oh yeah, congratulations. Also, we've chosen the participants, and I'm sorry, Lindon, you aren't going to be an Underlord for Team Black Flame because I'm poaching you. What? Yunk.
Mm-hmm. Did you expect that?
I did not expect that. I expected she was going to kick him out or something like that because she's still holding a grudge.
I figured it was going to be something like that too, where he wasn't going to participate in the capacity everybody wanted him to, from even the audience and the characters in the book. I feel like there had to have been some twist in there, but this book had a lot of interesting twists that Will hadn't really written in any of his previous books, especially in the Cradle series, which this also makes it, I think, my favorite book so far. Well, I've read all of them. This is my favorite book. But yeah, speaking of Will, Spencer, tell us about Will Wight.
Yeah, let's talk about Will Wight for a second. So if you have listened to the past two episodes, Slava gave us a little bit of a rundown already, but just as a refresher, Will Wight is a New York Times bestseller for a couple of different series, Cradle being one of them. His true power, though, is unleashed during a full moon when he transforms into a monstrous mongoose. Will lives in Florida, lurking beneath the swamps to ambush prey. He graduated from the University of Central Florida, where he received a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing and a cursed coin of Spanish gold. And I think was noted before, this was like a self-published autobiography in a sense of like his bio. So that's kind of fun. He's got several good series. He's also been nominated for a couple of awards and was retired from winning one award because he won it too many times. So that's pretty cool. And Waybound, which is the last book in the Cradle series, was the bestseller on Audible the week that it was released. So he's obviously been making a name for himself, and yeah, definitely look forward to seeing more stuff from him in the future.
It's a little less impressive than Sanderson. His last book of the Stormlight Archives isn't out yet, and it's been pre-ordered so much that it's the bestseller for Audible, I think, this month.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, Will has not been writing as long, I don't think, as Sanderson. So
Sanderson's on another level too when it comes to just the content, I guess. Will Wight's a great author and all, and the books are great, but Sanderson fans are probably going to hate this, but he's comparative to Tolkien, and the world that he builds is so detailed before he even gets into the meat and potatoes of the story. The world is just so fleshed out. Like in Warbreaker, perfect example. You had a full understanding of the magic system before you even met the world in just the little prologue. And that was the hook for a lot of people, especially for me. And I think Will Wight is not there yet, but that's also why Sanderson is, I think, the better author, and for good reason.
Give me some recommendations on that, because I started reading Mistborn, and it was good, but not excellent.
Start with Warbreaker.
Okay.
did you finish a Mistborn book? And also, did you read them in the right order?
I finished the first two. The first one was excellent. The second one, less excellent.
Era 1 or Era 2?
I don't know what that means.
There's whole eras to this.
Probably the first one then.
Who are the characters that you met? Just a name or two.
This is they're fighting against the evil empire. He's
The Lord Ruler.
the Lord Ruler. Yeah,
Okay.
is that era 1?
Arrow 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need to finish. Yeah, you need to finish book 3 in that series because book 2 is probably the slowest one of the group of those. So he wraps it up very nicely in book 3, and it has a great ending.
Okay.
Bands of Mourning.
Rather.
The other thing is there's a large time gap that happens between the end of book 3, Mistborn, and book 1, era 2, England-ish.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
worth the read. Same to you, Matt. There starts to be this is more foundation stuff. Hope to get to it in the podcast at some point, but things start to coalesce and come together as you continue to read the novels. So,
Hey, adventurers. Enjoying this episode of SideQuest so far? Make sure you're subscribed so you can keep up with all the side quests we go on. And now, back into the world of Cradle.
So JT, can you tell us a little bit about this genre and where Will gets his inspiration from?
Sure, Spencer. Will Wight's entire Cradle series, not his other books, but specifically Cradle, is based on a Chinese genre called Xianxia, which means immortal heroes. It's basically just immortal people in a very Chinese type setting. I wrote down a couple of basics for the genre, which I think is present in every book of this I've read. The first and most important one is that the world is always a brutal dog-eat-dog world. Everybody's out for themselves. Almost everybody is selfish. You find few friends and many enemies. 2, everybody is consumed with or not everybody, but most people are consumed with the desire to obtain immortality. This is part of Taoism, which is the philosophical text framework that the genre is built off of. It's full of many different intelligent species, but generally all humans are Chinese, essentially. It's based on honor and face culture. You've got a lot of very open dialogue between people. There's very little hiding what I really think. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of you, and it's not good. The last one is that it's full of what you might call profound mystery. They don't bother explaining things in the same way that you might have a Sanderson explaining here's how the magic system works. They go, it's chi, it's things interacting with each other and the elements in harmony and balance. I don't have to explain anything else.
Basically, it's magic. It works.
Yeah, they really don't bother to explain anything. And I think it works out really well because in this, you don't really want it to make sense. You want big explosion, big fights, people to feel like they're coming, as the underdog to a battle. I would say that is the basis of the genre. He does a lot of references to different tropes within that genre. The last episode that we did on Ghostwater was a classic dungeon, which is constantly used throughout this genre. And this one is no different. This is a pocket dimension, which is also a staple of the genre.
I mean, technically, Ghostwater was also a pocket dimension. It was just a dungeon pocket dimension.
Yeah, there is a bit of a difference without a distinction.
I was going to say, I was about to challenge you on that. So what's the difference? The name. They're just named differently.
So the difference is, it's mostly, I think, in the size, whereas Ghostwater was like essentially some guy's home. The pocket dimensions that are these huge areas like Nightwheel Valley are usually the control of a whole sect. Like the Akura clan, they are a cultivation sect in this world. Yeah, they create their own miniature universe where everything is the way that they want to, everything is helpful to their path.
Nice.
It's also currently in use, which is seemingly, at least, what Ghostwater wasn't, because it basically abandoned at the beginning.
So we had a question we were discussing before the episode where if you know what the book Underlord, the cover looks like, we were going back and forth on what it actually would be. And while we've been going through the episode, I did a quick Google. I did the Googles. Other people asked the same question. Not a surprise. This person said I haven't the slightest clue about what Underlord is supposed to be for the cover, other than it looks cool. Does anyone know? And someone said they're pretty sure it's the Heavens Drop that Ethan dips the Spirit Well water on. And they quoted this from the book. The Spirit Well water fell into the construct and it was absorbed, as though the energy drank it down. As the water vanished, the Heavens Drop grew brighter and brighter from a transparent and colorless gray-green to an almost blinding emerald. The scripted circles around the outside of the construct spun faster until it spat out bolts of vivid green lightning.
It's definitely it.
That's it. Sounds like
Checks out.
it was like just the one scene that I was in. And that's the cover?
I guess so.
There must be a profound mystery behind that.
I mean, it was a pretty important scene.
I thought it was the thing that Lindon used to cultivate his Underlord growth from the Emperor's vault that Ethan gave him, but I was supposedly wrong about that.
Well, from the Heavens Drop, Lyndon's, doesn't he go his pure core, and then Yerin gets like extra gold signs?
Yeah, that happens from the Heavens Drop.
Right. And then right after that, Orthos says goodbye. So maybe he thought that was just a very meaningful part in the story. Might as well put that on cover.
You trying to make me cry this morning with Orthos leaving?
Dude, that's my favorite part of this whole series.
Why do you hate Orthos?
I don't hate Orthos. The way that it was written, it was by far the most emotional part of the entire book or the entire series up until this point, to where you actually had like that heart tug feeling about Orthos, because Orthos was always just that gruff
Curmudgeon.
And if you listen to it on Audible, he voiced Orthos really, really well, I think. And it was just very, very grumbly, like he always had gravel in the back of his throat. And then he's just like, I must go on and
Yeah, that's what he sounds like.
forge my own path, pretty much. And it was just like Yerin was crying, Lindon was crying, everybody was crying, even Mercy was crying. Ethan, they even wrote he had like a sparkle in his eye or something like that, hinting that he was like tearing up. It was very, very well written, and the goodbye, I think, was it didn't outstay its welcome either, to where it was just like everybody cry and keep crying. It was just Orthos said the thing, he's leaving, everybody cried, said goodbye, and then they move on. And that was all right after the Heavens Drop too. Orthos realized like, oh, he surpassed me. I knew he was going to, but it's still bittersweet. So now I have to go on a separate walkabout, pretty much. And then at the end of the book, I had no idea that that's where he was going to go. I had no idea.
Neither did I.
Same thing.
First time I read it.
That blew me away. Once he started opening, was it the epilogue? Or was it
was
just
the epilogue,
the
I think.
Was it? Okay. Because he just started talking about Kelsa this, Kelsa that, Kelsa this, Kelsa that. And then she's fighting Heaven's Glory. I was like, oh, so we're back in Sacred Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had said Weishi Kelsa a couple other times. So like, okay, so that's his sister. And then Orthos shows up like, oh my jeez, break.
Yeah,
It was very, very great ending to this book too.
so good.
So I guess that's a good transition to our favorite scenes, because I think that's yours.
Yeah, definitely.
It was also mine. I loved the way that he maintains a look on his other characters. It's something I appreciate in a lot of novels. It's something that the cultivation novels from China don't do. They focus entirely on one character, and they give out snippets, Dragon Ball style, where they'll tease the next villain perhaps, but they'll never go back and look at other characters somewhere else in the universe.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Rip Yamcha.
It's supposed to be more equivalent to like a historical kind of account, a lot in the way it reads, where you never really get the sense of what the character is thinking unless it states it explicitly. It often just an account of what the character is doing.
That's curious to me, though, because I would think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because you probably have more information on this, but Asian culture is more collective than individualistic. So I find it curious that the novels are more individualistic if they're following just a single person, as opposed to like, I don't know a better word, but like fellowship or a small group or like a series of people. A clan, yeah, that's a good, yeah.
China wrung out all of its capitalism, all of its individualist
Here we go.
ideas,
All right.
and they distilled it into this perfect genre. All right? That's what I think.
You call this genre perfect?
Yes,
I
I read it so
I-
much.
Okay. There's so many things I want to say right now.
No, this is when they. It's sort of a joke, of course, but they are natural capitalists in a lot of ways. The Chinese, they love to be
As in, like, power rules all natural or something else?
well, power rules all, and also they're usually when you think of communists, you think somebody who's well, we're working for the good of the collective. We're selling things for the good of the collective, exchanging between people. But that's not how the Chinese think. The Chinese think, I'm going to wring every penny out of you. And if you're not trying to avoid wringing every penny out of you, then you're not doing it right. Their communist society works a lot like how I would expect a libertarian society to work.
Except at the high levels.
Interesting.
Which brings us into the idea of Western versus Eastern kind of storytelling, which I bet you guys have some interesting perspectives on. Because I've seen the Eastern side of it. I wanted to see if you thought there was anything that jumped out to you. That's, oh, this is very Eastern.
So I'm a big DBZ fan too. I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and Jonathan actually told me about this series, and he said it was DBZ in space. Now, I can see where somebody who hasn't really watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z would say that.
Yeah.
But it does have some moments, like the infinite power level ups. Like it's just you reach a wall in the story, you fighting a villain or whatever conflict you're in, and then you go to the next level, and then it's like this big cool thing, and then you move on, and then you hit the other wall, and then you climb. It's basically just this giant staircase of power levels. So that, I think, is the closest way that somebody who hasn't seen Dragon Ball Z would be able to equate the two. But as far as the whole Eastern and Western connotations, I think, Casey, you also had something on that too.
Yeah. Particularly, there's a lot of, in Western versus Eastern. Western has a lot of, like, the values make the man sort of thing. Like your personal morals are important. You see that a lot in comic books. All the superheroes, their personal morals are more important than the fight that they're currently in. Not so much on the Eastern side. If you can't win the fight that you're in, your morals don't matter. You're dead. So strength trumps all in a lot of Eastern literature. If you can negotiate and wring out every drop of power from everything you get your hands on, then you can enforce your ideals upon everyone else.
I just need to interject 1 second and correct Matt. I did not say DBZ in space. I said
Yes,
DBZ
you did.
I said DBZ in book form.
No, you said DBZ in space.
I did not.
Yes,
That
you
wouldn't
did.
make sense. Nope.
It doesn't make sense. That's why.
No.
I was about to ask about that.
No take backsies.
You're misremembering. No, I said that there are moments where these Abaddon from space interact with the planet. But I said, because I've said this to so many people. I said this to Spencer, Slava, you. It's Dragon Ball Z in book form.
Well, they already have that, and it's called the manga, and it still doesn't equate.
No, it's different.
I'm a little curious, though, with the space stuff, because that's something that I wanted to bring up during this session, is the way that the Chinese genre approaches how the world works in terms of the physics of it. They don't have space. There is no space in these books. There is the mortal plane, which may as well be flat Earth for all you care. It's infinite. It does not wrap around, as far as I can tell. And they use teleporting pads to get around. It's interesting because they often talk about the sun, the moon, the stars, but they never question, oh, I could go there. They may as well be different dimensions or holes in the celestial firmament.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say that too, but I think it's the people who don't think about it, the majority of the world or Cradle, they're just not at a level high enough to think about that. But the higher that you go, getting all the way to Abaddon and stuff like that, you're pretty much existing outside of that realm in space, for lack of a better term. So I feel like it's just the fewer people who have the abilities or the capabilities to get to that power level, they just don't care because they know that they're just never going to get there. So the curiosity is pretty much stifled by the people holding that power, that they can just tell them what they need to know.
Right. If you can't exist beyond the bounds of your world, then for all intents and purposes, you can't get to space.
What's the point of thinking about it?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Spencer, any thoughts?
I don't have a ton of knowledge of Eastern versus Western writing. I haven't really read any Eastern, genre stuff. My perspective would be obviously all Western, I think. Yeah, from my perspective, I don't really have much to offer on that. But one thing that I saw in the series as a whole is Ethan and Lindon's sort of mentorship. And I thought that was interesting because I don't feel like we do that much here in Western culture, where you have a mentor who kind of takes on a younger mentee. I don't know, maybe that's more of an Eastern thing. Again, I don't really know much about that over there. But here, it's all about yourself and kind of individualism and how you just kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and take on the world. And it almost feels like it's up to your own self to make your own path. What we see with Ethan and Lindon is Ethan sees somebody who is weak, who doesn't have a lot of power, but he sees potential. And so he wants to cultivate that in Lindon. And that's something that I think is very beautiful. Ethan is someone who is willing to step outside of his own comfort zone and to take on the challenge of mentoring someone who he thinks has the potential to be something great. And so, like I said, I don't really see that much here in Western culture. It's all about, like once you turn 18, it's kind of like up to your own to go find that help or to go make your own path. And so I would love to see more mentorship type programs here in the West, and just people being willing to take on challenges, greater than themselves. So, yeah, Slava, what do you think? You've been kind of quiet for a little while.
Yeah, well, I want to dovetail what you just said, because the individualism versus more corporate approach to advancement between the East and the West, I find that interesting. Like from the Eastern perspective, the way I understand it, there's more interconnectedness and balance, right? So there's the balance between body, spirit, and external forces like aura. You have more linear and individualistic progression in the West, where from the Eastern perspective, it's more cyclical and meditative, requiring characters to sometimes even revisit past experiences that feeds into current experiences. The stuff that you mentioned, Matt, when you hit a wall, what I've noticed is both Yerin and Lindon kind of reflecting back on what has happened before in their past lives, overcoming that, but also using it as a catapult, for lack of a better term, in their current progression, whatever the wall they hit, to use your words. In the current book, they use that to beat the enemy, to overcome the current obstacles. So Eastern themes also emphasize like harmony with the world that you find yourself in and acceptance of one's place in the greater whole during this journey. Like, so there's like more than one thing happening, where again, in the West, it's more linear. You get to 18, then you get to the next thing, then you get your career, then you get the wife, the house, the white picket fence, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So my limited knowledge of East versus West, that's how I look at it.
I feel like in this series, it's Will Wight's interpretation of Eastern storytelling.
That too.
It's a good blend, I think, of the two cultures as far as storytelling, character development, stuff like that. Because going back to Spencer's point, the whole discipleship aspect of it, in Eastern culture, the disciple would always seek out the mentor, or most of the time. Obviously, there's exceptions. But most of the time, it's like, all right, I have left home. I have to get better to make my clan better. They choose a profession. They choose where they want to go, and they want to go find somebody who is better than them and learn from them, and then foster that relationship, and then, serve the betterment of the community. In Western culture, the majority of the stories are always just about this lone wolf, travel in the wastes, travel in the desert, and just doing stuff all by himself. Very seldom do they go and either seek out a mentor, or they just bump into somebody who just happens to be, plot device, and just makes them stronger. And that's the cool thing of how I think George Lucas handled the hero's journey. We've all heard that term before, hero's journey. And I made some notes about this, and it was the Cradle series is the hero's journey full of anti-heroes because of how they're written, because they all so desperately want to do their own thing, but they can't because they have this wall that they have to break through together, because otherwise they won't be able to get through it, with Lindon being the exception.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Will Wight's borrowing from a Western framework, specifically the hero's journey, putting Lindon and Yerin into this framework. The characters undergo trials, they grow in power, and ultimately transform into something greater. For the Western side of it, there's an end. You achieve this thing, you grow in power, you transform, and end of story. And back to JT's point, there's this kind of an ongoing transformation in the Eastern framework.
And then that runs directly into our next kind of topic, is the revelation. The Underlord revelation for Lindon was he doesn't want to be considered worthless. So he wants to find his spot in the collective to protect his home, his family, and all that other kind of stuff.
I had the opposite feeling about the Underlord revelation. I loved it from the perspective of it's a fantastic plot device as well as a classic kind of way of doing advancement in these cultivation novels. He's definitely made it his own. I've never seen this particular one before, but there's a lot of through lines back to the original genre. I didn't see his revelation as being collective. I saw it as being him putting away his dependence on his early life and saying, I'm doing this because I didn't want to be worthless. Now I'm kind of showing that I'm not. I've realized that about myself. What everybody else think about that? Because I really thought that it's a cool moment for, I think, a couple people in there. Yerin had her Underlord revelation. Mercy had her Underlord revelation.
Lindon obviously had his Underlord. He actually figured it out first. And it was like, oh, crap, I can't do it here. I don't have the time. I have to do it surrounded by the strongest cultivation possible. So they all did it basically simultaneously. But I would say it's interesting to me that it wasn't like a personal revelation about, well, I guess it was a personal revelation about why they're doing it, but it all comes down to, the various fears or insecurities about themselves. That's what I wasn't expecting. I was thinking it was going to be, something more positive, but ultimately comes down to, I want to be left behind. I don't want to be weak again.
Yeah, I don't want to see people around me die.
I don't want my mom to be right. That last one I can empathize with sometimes.
I love the concept of needing, and this goes into, not to bring everything back to Stormlight, but like this is why I love progression fantasy, is the idea that the only way to actually grow in life is to self-reflect. And it's a deep theme throughout most progression fantasy that I've seen, because at some point in the journey, you have to turn inward to get stronger, to grow, to get more power, et cetera, because frankly, and this is like a real world quip, you are your own worst enemy, and your glass ceiling is your fault. It's not the stuff that's happened to you. It's not the cards you were dealt. Everyone was dealt different cards.
Victim mentality.
Yeah, some people were given better cards than others. If you've been listening for a long time, like I have a birth defect that deeply impacts my life literally day to day, and people can't understand that, and I don't expect them to. My body's different. I don't have a large intestine, and it causes me a lot of issues. And one of those issues is kidney stones, and almost daily. So, like, I don't expect you to understand. I don't expect you to need to understand. But that doesn't change the fact that I have to deal with it and engage in the world differently than you do. But your stuff might be that you had a traumatic childhood, or your parents like abandoned you, or whatever it is. Like, you have to, if you want to grow, if you want to become an Underlord to keep it relevant, you have to choose to turn inward and go, what are the things that I currently believe that are not true? Or what are the things that I currently am doing that are not actually helping me get further in the life that I want? And am I willing to change that? It's what Lindon goes through. It's what Yerin goes through to get that power up. Mercy is a little different because she was, trapped by her own needing to go off and be a little different from her family. But like, you have to choose like, oh, this is why I do the things that I do. And then choose to integrate that, to quote Carl Jung, one of the earliest psychologists that we recognize. And then from there, you can, You can level up. You can get that soul fire and go, okay, this is the purpose by which I'm living my life. How do I integrate that? How do I use that to move forward and let it propel me? Or do I say, you know what, that doesn't serve me anymore. I need to do something else. So kind of a strong deviation as I voice these things, but those are my inklings and thoughts and mullings in terms of progression fantasy, real life, as Slava calls it, worldview.
Well, in Underlord, this self-reflection that you're talking about, Will Wight directly ties it to the cultivation and progression system, right? Characters cannot advance without understanding their fears, their desires, their motivations.
Yeah.
And to your point, Jonathan, it kind of mirrors real life. Progress in our lives requires confronting and resolving these inner conflicts, whether it's a birth defect, an abusive home, abandonment, whatever the hell it is.
100%.
I love how it also implies something as well about the rest of the world. How if understanding yourself is basically the only thing you need to do to become Underlord, how many sacred artists are stuck at the peak of true gold, sitting there wondering, what don't I understand about myself?
Boom.
And I think for us as readers, we get to connect with characters on a more personal level. As they reveal their vulnerabilities, their struggles, that's where we find a connection. That's why I've mentioned numerous times that Yerin is my favorite character, because I connect with her on a few different levels, and how she responds to things is very much akin to how I responded when I was younger, and maybe sometimes still respond to things.
It does also bring up a thought that each of those who have made it to or past Underlord in the series have had to come to this confrontation with themselves. And those who are attempting to reach Underlord would have had to have that confrontation. People like the Kurum Harmony from the last one, I don't think he would have had the self-reflection necessary in order to become Underlord, even as he managed to figure out the whole issue with forming his inner space. He just did not seem like the type of individual who would be capable of that.
I like this train of thought. Give me a little more on that. What sticks out to you as to why he wouldn't have been capable of that?
He was very, not just self-focused, but to an obsessive degree. If you disturbed his peace, he would lash out with such force that he would usually kill anyone that was lower than his level of true gold. And even other true golds had a hard time with it. Everyone was silent around him when he first entered Ghostwater. They were basically saying, okay, Big Dog doesn't like people speaking up. Don't say anything. And he, funny enough, does not have the inner harmony that his name would imply, which I think applies, let's go on a little side quest here, to every single one of the Akura that we've seen so far, aside maybe from Mercy. Their names are given to them ironically by Will Wight.
I disagree.
Fight, 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 fight.
Really?
Brother against brother.
Why do you betray me, brother?
So Harmony is harmonious. Now, he's not harmonious with other people, but he is full of inner harmony with himself. I actually disagree with the Underlord revelation. I think he probably does understand that he is a cold-blooded person, and that's really the intent behind the name. That's what I would guess. It's not direct. It's not like your name is Mercy, and so you always give people mercy. Your name is Harmony, so you're always in harmony with others. But there is a bit of a through line to that.
But it feels like for each one, even though you could say that they have, like, he's got harmony because, he's got this calm, he's cold and he knows it. When someone threatens that harmony, he responds with such, like, force and anger almost. Not anger, I guess. He's just, like, calmly kills them. Doesn't matter to him.
Well, that's how you maintain harmony.
Maintain harmony. That's what I'm saying. There's like an underlying irony to each of the names.
Okay.
Like Charity.
She's not very charitable.
The gifts of Charity. No, she does give charitable gifts, but there's a spiteful poison to each of the gifts that she gives. She allowed the Empire or whatever to strike at the Black Flame, the kingdom, the Satian kingdom, to strike at the Black Flame with impunity. But that only inspired, a counterstrike from the Black Flame Empire that ended up killing one of the princes, the favored prince even. Then she allowed the Black Flame to go at the vault that the Akura clan had there. But she also warned the Satian Empire and gave them, the prep time necessary to turn it into a trap. And then she allowed the Satian princes a second chance to go after Lindon, but that ended up killing one of them. So every one of the gifts so far that she's been given is like a trap in the form of a gift of charity.
Yeah, I have a thought on that. Kind of going back to harmony, him having harmony within himself. The definition is, I mean, there's kind of a few, but one of them is a pleasing or congruent arrangement of parts characterized by balance, peace, or mutual understanding, or also a state of balance and alignment between different aspects of life, such as one's thoughts, feelings, or actions. So going back, I think it was JT's point about harmony being in harmony with who he is as a person. That makes sense to me, because one thing that I find interesting is there are going to be people that we meet later on in the series who we would consider quote unquote evil, who are definitely past the Underlord phase. And so they had to come to a conclusion about themselves. And so I find it interesting that we, like our main characters, we focus on them being, they had to come to this personal conclusion about themselves, and we think it might be good, or they are progressing maybe morally even, whereas the characters that we see later on who, they're quote unquote evil or definitely antagonists in the series, where they've also had to have Underlord revelations about themselves, and those might be similar to maybe Harmony if he would have had his, where he was content with who he was as a person, and he would have known I'm just a killer, and I'm okay with that, and that would have been enough to get him to his Underlord stage. Slava, you got any thoughts on that?
I'm going to plead agnostic. I can see what Casey is saying, and I can see what JT is saying. If I was going to play devil's advocate, I would say, sure, he does have harmony, but it's important to note that his form of harmony with himself, where inner harmony, is deeply flawed. I think his arrogance, his cold-bloodedness is an example, is evidence of a lack of self-reflection or poor self-reflection, but it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, because I honestly see both sides. I can see how it can be argued from both positions.
Right.
So
Right.
I forget, at this point in the story, have we learned what Mercy's mother's name is yet?
Malice?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've seen that along the
Okay.
way up to this point.
There's been no interaction with her, I don't think, but I'm pretty sure that it's a known name at least.
Yeah, other than that one scene she had with Mercy in this book.
Right. It was just, her facing off against the Dread God.
So it'll be interesting to see what your opinions are going forward, because you'll see more of these Akura characters going forward.
Especially in the next book as they prep for the tournament, and Lindon
Right.
has been pulled into the
Drafted.
Yes, drafted
Like an
into
NBA player.
Drafted.
That's one way to put it.
Your first round pick.
As my first pick, I'm going to take your star player.
His rookie
What?
season, if you will.
Close. Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, if you guys are enjoying today's side quest, show your support by sharing this episode with a fellow book lover, because every journey, as Jonathan often tells me, is better with friends.
I have to tell you that?
Well, yeah, you do.
Oh, okay.
Is it on your schedule or something? Remind Slava.
Exactly.
It's a monthly text that goes out.
Monthly.
It's a reminder text. Slava, you can't just keep getting new co-hosts and bumping me off.
It's like a parent reminding their child to get the lunch before they leave for school. Don't forget your lunch. Don't forget, friends are better.
Say no to drugs.
Oh, we don't say that one.
So I was thinking about looking at a couple of hot takes. What are people's, I know we've had some arguments already, but some people's real hot takes on this series so far, but especially on this current book.
I'm not a big fan of Mercy. I think she is the equivalent of Team Jacob to Twilight.
No mercy run.
Explain that.
So I don't know how familiar you guys are with
Twilight.
Let's pretend that we're not. Let's pretend
There's
that
a
we're all
wolf and a
ignorant.
vampire.
So that's pretty much it. Slava nailed it. You've got Team Jacob and Team Edward. Edward is the vampire who's like the main love interest for Twilight. I know all this because I watched it with a girlfriend I was in high school with.
Sure.
My condolences.
I see the
Thank you.
DVD set right behind you, Matt.
It's a box set.
The books also look like they have little Post-it notes in it and highlights.
I have dog-eared a couple just for these such occasions. But anyways, Edward is like the first kind of character, and then through a couple of the books, you meet this guy Jacob, and he's like the Mercy, the secondary love interest who's just really good at what he does, but he's always opposed to Edward. And then the main character, Bella or Lindon, always has to kind of is either forced to or is forced into choosing one or the other. And Mercy is always just the equivalent of Team Jacob because she's great. She's cool. She's got lots of power. She's very, very strong. She's good to Lindon, but we all know that it's not gonna happen.
Do we?
Do we?
Yeah, have we seen any love or romantic scenes between either of these three?
There is a lot of tension between all of these characters, I think.
It's mostly just been, I'd say this past book where we start to see any real romantic tension. It is mostly just friend tension up to this point. Especially, we had the whole thing with Ghostwater where they were all separated. It was Mercy and Yerin, and then Lindon was stuck with Orthos. So it's the equivalent of a split gang will search for clues. The girls go with this way, and then Shaggy and your pet go that way.
Yeah, I don't see the analogy that you're building here. I haven't read Twilight, so maybe it's just I don't have the nuance here, Matt. But I don't feel like because Mercy's entire personality, and maybe it's just because I don't have the nuance, but her personality is like I want to be friends with everyone. Even when we see her originally, and Lindon doesn't know the Akura family at all, and there's like a contest for the Sky Sworn, and she's like, "Hi, I'm Mercy," and she helps the kid that just got beat up by Lindon. She's friendly. She just wants to be friends with everyone because she wasn't raised with any friends. She was raised alone, basically in solitude, and her whole family doesn't like her because they're all not as powerful as her. For the people that are like at her level, quote unquote. And so I kind of see the romantic tension you're talking about, but not anywhere else in their trio because they're all like traveling together, doing the same stuff. She is a little resistant in terms of topics that are not relevant to romance, but I don't see it.
I'm thinking that the point Matt was trying to make was that she was introduced and this sort of the possible love triangle is there for the purpose of what we're doing now. Speculation about will they or won't they?
I've noticed that tension that you're talking about, Matt. And I mentioned in previous episodes, I see Yerin changing her disposition towards Lindon very so slightly, where she's processing like, oh, and I'm putting words in her mouth. This is how I'm reading the scene. Oh, this is more than just a traveling companion or a brother. So her sisterly affections are starting to ever so slightly feel like more romantic. Kind of feel like she's processing, oh, do I like him? Do I not like him? What is this? What is this thing that I'm feeling?
Right.
So with my hot take, I said that Lindon hooks up with Mercy and Yerin goes absolutely ape. Like the second that Yerin finds out, she wouldn't just lose her mind. She'd straight up try to punch Lindon or hit him with the endless sword. Say something like, oh, you think that little library nerd is better than me?
Would she hit Lindon or would she attack Mercy?
Probably both. Poor Lindon is like, hey, it was the aura. It messed with my head. Like, back me up, Dross. And meanwhile, Dross is like full troll mode going, hey, bro, you're on your own for this one.
That would be a funny scene.
I don't have enough data on Yerin's love life. Please gather some more for me so I can create a paradigm for you to follow.
And Ethan, of course, would show up late, surveying all the damage and saying something like, Lindon, I always knew you had terrible taste in women.
No. It'd be worse than that. He'd be already there. He's just like in the background watching the whole thing because that's how he operates. He's the author fiat. He is a Deus ex machina. He just shows up whenever he is needed because he's always been there.
And that's his superpower too. He's just, I know everything and what everybody's going to do.
Can you ever be wrong? I have yet to do so. Please be wrong sometimes. I can't do that.
I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
Now you're starting to sound like me.
That's sort of my hot take. Ethan, up to this point, is basically just an author. Okay, Lindon needs X materials, advice in this. Yerin needs someone to show her the path to go on to. All right, we've got all the checks checked off. That's the all free up right there.
He absolutely is. And it's funny that in these novels, you constantly have to balance giving your characters convincingly powerful enemies to fight. But if you give them enemies that are really, really powerful and they're not quite ready yet, you also have to give them some way to advance. I've seen other authors do this by random chance. You find an item or discover some opportunity. Being able to find opportunity within adversity is a constant theme of Xianxia cultivation novels. But in Will Wight's universe, that job is almost solely taken up by Ethan, who comes along and says, oh, you need a power-up. I got you. And he plays around with this. Some of it is an in-joke. Do you guys remember the scene from, I believe it was Black Flame, where he first introduces Black Flame as a path to Lindon?
Yeah.
And in Lindon they're going down to the room with all of the histories of all the paths. And he says, hey, this has got everything in it. And Lindon goes, well, can I just see the most powerful ones? He's like, do you really think that we would give you access to the top paths available? Well, yeah, here they are. That was an in-joke. That was an in-joke because normally those kinds of things in these novels are jealously guarded and never given out to anybody, even if you lose nothing by doing so. He is definitely Deus Ex Machina. He is Will Wight's self-insert, if I were to take a guess.
Self-insert.
I disagree. The archetype of the mentor is supposed to guide along the journey. Gandalf does the same thing. Now, granted, Tolkien was a lot less direct in what he gives, which is where I think the Deus Ex Machina comments are coming from. But because it's a cultivation novel, because it's like very fast-paced, Wight doesn't, and I mean, feel free to challenge me on this, but there's no one moment that Wight ever sits on. It's just like, boom, 2 seconds, boom, 2 seconds, boom. And you're like having this emotional journey, and he never sits on these moments, which I think would have been more fun. I said this in one of the earlier episodes for Underlord, where I think that it would have been nice to sit on the moment of Yerin's death, toting the line of death a little longer, but he doesn't do that. Every book that he writes is so fast-paced. I think that Ethan showing up and doing these things seems Deus Ex Machina, but I think, and this is for the people who've finished reading the series, that it's honestly just really good foreshadowing. Now, careful how you talk about it, because two of our constituents have not gotten there yet, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I can see both points, because I've definitely felt at times in the story where Lindon's about to die, or he's facing a foe who is significantly more advanced than he is, and then all of a sudden Ethan shows up out of nowhere and just gives him the thing that he needs in order to exactly. Yep. Trumpets blaring for sure. But in order for Lindon to be able to fight or to advance or whatever the situation may be. But then, at the same time, Ethan is a mentor to Lindon, and so he's constantly looking out for him, and Ethan is obviously significantly more advanced than Lindon up to this point in the series. And so it kind of makes sense that he would kind of know the things to do in order to advance, or the things that Lindon needs. So I guess I don't really have like one way or the other in which I think, but I can definitely see why both points are being viewed the way they are.
Very Switzerland of you, Spencer.
Yes, thank you. I
sit on that fence.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us your absolutely wrong hot take, though?
Okay, Slava. Yeah, absolutely. I think Yerin's quips and one-liners aren't that funny. I think sometimes she...
Boo this man.
I know. Bleed and bury me. Yeah,
Give me
feel
the
free
worst.
to disagree with me on this, but Yeah, I think there are sometimes she throws things out there, and I'm just like, I didn't find that funny. It just felt a little bit, in some aspects, childish in certain scenes. Yeah, I don't know. That's just my hot take.
So I actually disagree quite a bit with that because I think they're funny. That's just a personal preference, but I think that he wrote it that way because when she ended up living with the Sword Sage, when they went through his little story, he was very gruff, salty, loner kind of guy, but he was an older guy, whereas she is just a child picking up all of these mannerisms from this old man, and that's all she's ever really known for years and years and years. So that translates to now she's sitting with Lindon and Mercy, who have had families and stuff like that, and remember what that's all like. And that's why she just stands out as this very weird, quirky being in the story, and why she has those sayings, like the whole bleed and bury me. I just think that's hilarious.
That definitely sounds like something an old man would say, not a 17-year-old girl.
Right, but that feels less like jokes and more kind of said. I actually agree with Spencer, but I can't remember a single funny one-liner or joke from her off the top of my head. I can remember stuff from like Lindon and Orthos and his little ghost companion, Dross, but I could even remember stuff like Ethan's introduction where he's basically bowing and scraping in order to get into the, get himself quote unquote enslaved and put into the the temple.
The Jai clan.
The Jai Clan temple.
I can't remember a single joke with any clarity from Yerin.
She is sort of the Drax the Destroyer from Guardians of the Galaxy. If you guys remember, he's the
Yeah.
the
Nothing
guy
goes
that
over my head. I would catch it.
Yeah, exactly. But she says things that are supposed to be funny to the reader, but oftentimes she's saying them in a more serious way. Like if he were actually there, she's deadpan saying something. It might come off as funny as we're reading. It's a bit of the Marvel humor.
How has no one killed you yet? I'm going to just read a few of these lines for us. If I saw you on fire, I'd hold an umbrella for you so the rain didn't put you out. When a traveler cannot find a path, sometimes he must make his own. That one's less funny. Oh, where's that one that I was thinking of? I expect you all to carry me like a rescued princess.
Was that Ethan?
No, this is all. I looked up Yerin's. Oh, okay.
That would have been a lot funnier if
You would have
Ethan
made.
said
You're
that for
making a joke
sure.
to me, and I'm thinking over here
Yeah.
trying to look these things up. Let's see. What do you have any that you can think of off the top of your head for the other people who are thinking this is funny?
Not off the top of my head, but I just know that every time she has like a little quip or something like that, I chuckle.
Yeah.
Just because it's so out of place for whatever situation that they're in.
One of the key lines in Underlord that I really love is when she's talking with Lindon about the Uncrowned King tournament, and he's like, "What's the final prize?" And she's like, "You ask me, but who am I supposed to ask?" Where she's just like, "I don't know," but it's just very Yerin.
She's kind of there to diffuse tension. You get some tension in the scene, and then she comes up with a one-liner that might be extremely applicable to that particular situation, but it also pulls you out a little bit of the tension. And whether or not you like that is probably dependent on how averse you are to having that tension.
And that's where, like you said, it's that Marvel humor where it does
Right.
seem sort of out of place in the serious situations, but it's that comic relief, but it's not from the character that you expect. Whereas Drax is, that he's the comic relief because he has lines like Spencer said, nothing goes over my head. I would catch it. All in the middle of a serious conversation of world universe-ending events. It's just like, I get it, it comes from Drax, but Yerin, the more serious, 99% of the time, throws some of those jokes out there, and it's just like,
I enjoyed her one-liners.
They're not for everybody. They just like not all humor's for everybody. So I'll say that, Spencer. I disagree with you, but I don't think that they're meant to be to other people's point. It's not like it's not Ethan funny, where he's like, my skin. Don't mess with my skin. It's my best feature.
Yeah.
It's different.
And that's why that's my hot take.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
My hot take is that I think that I love infuriating characters, and I think Charity was that, and Prince Daji especially. Characters that you can love to hate. I've been thinking about this for a little bit. Big, bad, evil characters are absolutely fantastic. but they're not as fun as characters that aren't quite as bad, but are way more hated. I think about it like
Dolores Umbridge to
yes,
Voldemort.
Dolores Umbridge versus Voldemort. Voldemort is undoubtedly the more evil character, and yet you feel so much more vindicated when Dolores Umbridge gets kicked out of Hogwarts.
Oh, Harry Potter reference.
That's how you call
Yeah.
it. I call it kidnapped
Or when-
by
yeah.
centaurs.
I was just gonna say, yeah, when she gets carried away by the centaurs, that was a great moment.
Yeah, but it's you cheer for their loss in a way that you don't for the pure evil characters, because pure evil, you don't hate them because they're pure evil. You might as well hate tsunamis for destroying houses. It's weather. It happens. Pure evil is like that. Whereas corrupt evil, some sort of character that you should be on my side. You should be able to empathize or sympathize with me, but you're not. That's what dodgy, I think, is, especially starting from this book. Is, I'm just a snot-nosed kid who has way more power than I know what to do with, and I'm going to hate you forever.
I'm just a kid. I'm going to make it everyone else's problem.
Right.
I'm just a kid. My life is a nightmare
Thank you, Simple Plan.
for everybody.
Nice throwback.
I think Charity was also that in this book as well a couple times, where, once again, I think back to the point that Casey made. Charity would constantly do something to mess up whatever's happening, be mysterious on purpose, constantly makes, oh man, so annoyed at this Charity woman. Come on.
An incessant pot stirrer.
Right. That's exactly what she was in this book.
A meddler of sorts.
Yeah.
My
What
hot
was
take.
it? Deadpool said, I don't take the shits. I just stir them.
Great. That's a
Genius.
That's an apt image compared to JT's intro this morning for us.
It's your intake.
My hot take is that Dross becomes really good friends with Little Blue and Orthos, and they all just talk about Lindon in front of him / in his mind. I really want to see that. I also want to see Cassius get a one-up on Ethan at some point, and Ethan be surprised.
I just want to see Ethan surprised.
Those aren't hot takes.
He was with Dross. He's like,
I was
"What?"
just gonna. Yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes in the book. Actually, was when when Lindon reveals Dross to Ethan. Ethan was legitimately surprised that Lindon had Dross and that he was hiding him. That Lindon was hiding Dross from Ethan. Just the look of pure shock, I imagine, on Ethan's face would have been glorious to Lindon.
Yes.
Too bad he didn't have a camera to capture that moment forever.
Yeah, thanks, Dross.
Rude.
Well, this brings us to a fun portion of SideQuest. You guys listened to the rough edits of the previous 2 episodes where Jonathan and I created our own paths and what techniques we would have. I'm curious, we'll start with you, Casey. What would be your Sacred Arts path if you were in this world of Cradle?
I came up with the path of the grasping abyssal maw.
Ooh.
What is eaten becomes fuel for growth. The stronger and the more rare the ingredients you eat, the more powerful ones becomes. It's like, instead of the spiritual consumption that you see with a lot of the cultivation materials, it's actually physically eating the stuff, making dishes out of it.
So you would have enjoyed Ghost Water quite a bit then.
Oh yeah, probably.
All them fish or the carp.
Man, fish is good food. My dad does not think so. He is very anti-fish.
So what happens if you
Fishless.
eat something that gives you a stomach ache?
Weak constitution. Your spirit, you will never ascend to nirvana.
Rolls a nat 1 on Constitution saves.
I try to eat the fish. It's alive and slaps me in the face.
Anyway, those drawn to the path of the abyssal maw will be stalwart, stubborn, have not just an interest in eating, then all the other parts that, like cooking, hunting, gathering, harvesting. So it's just, everything related to, cultivation, not in the spiritual sense, but the physical one.
So you're a farmer.
Yeah, farmer, hunter, various paths to take. A couple techniques that you could take for it would be like I've come up with suitably wushu sounding names for each of them. Space consuming vortex. So you turn yourself into like the eye of a storm, or what would be like the the event horizon of a black hole, sucking everything towards you, because the whole path is focused on grappling. So as soon as you get someone into grab range, the fight is over for them at that point. Is the strategy behind it. So it's that, and then Jaws of the Beast, where your hands basically become, what is it?
Crab claws.
Not Iron Maidens, not crab claws, but
Crab claws. That's all I'm hearing. Crab claws.
I'm thinking, what was it? Vice grips,
Okay, I see it.
where it's impossible to escape a grab.
It's
Your
just
hand just transforms
mechanical
into a
crab
tool.
claws.
Come here. I've got to twist this vice grip down in you. Okay, I got you.
Hey, can you do that, but with your mouth?
No.
Whoa!
No, I can't. Just
that
ask my
sounds
wife.
unfortunate. All right, how about you, Matt? What's your path?
So I wrote down a little bit of preface here. I'm a big D&D nerd, and my favorite class is the Warlock. So it's just a little dark and gritty. The path of the Edgelord, often used to describe someone who deliberately walks the line between rebellion, boundary pushing, with an aura of mystique or a darker edge. It can sometimes imply like a rejection of conventional norms, a challenge to the established order, kind of existential exploration of one's identity, purpose, yada, yada, yada. On this path, you may see life as a battleground. Basically, everything's a fight where you fight both internal and external forces. This path could involve intense emotional, spiritual discipline, resilience, and embracing one's unique power and will. The best defense is a good offense when it comes to this, and it's more weapons focused and physical martial art as far as the battles would come, I think, or at least their battle attributes. I think this would be a cool path if they just were a lot more weapons focused, and how they could, in Cradle, they can have a lot of weapons stored within their cores or near their cores, and I can just like summon them and kind of have them floating around me and just basically have zero defense, just 100% offense all the time. That's my Edgelord path.
Careful not to cut yourself on all that edge.
Well, and that's what comes with the weakness. JT, hit us with your path.
All right. I didn't make a lot of details for mine. I called it the path of the Jester. Great at parties and puns of all kind. Primarily focused on using humor to put people off guard, and you can strike at them when they don't expect it. It's focused on illusion and convincing people. It's affecting their mind in such a way that you can attack them from there. So yeah, it's some of the techniques that you can do are, it's. I didn't actually come up with any.
So it's a derivation of the white fox path.
You might say so.
I did. That's
Conjure-
actually
yeah.
what I said right now.
Conjure up illusions. Perhaps you can make jokes. Perhaps you can even read people's minds a bit to see what.
Whoa. All right. Calm down there. What am I thinking right now?
It's more vicious mockery than anything else.
What are you thinking right
About
now?
to say the
I
bard
think that
class.
it's a dumb
Yes,
idea.
Definitely a bard. This is a College of Lore bard, everybody.
Am I right?
Classic.
Oh, that's funny.
Someone should have come up with some techniques for their whole path,
boy.
Jeremy.
I'm sensing a little drama, a little tension.
I'm
here.
I'm gonna bring the sound pad back out.
Which one of you is? I'm sensing one of you's
You
dodging.
bring yours out. I'm bringing mine out. Mine's bigger.
Okay, not that kind of podcast, guys. Okay, that's different. That's a different podcast.
Spencer.
Moving on.
JT sounds like Wit from the
That's what
Stormlight
I was thinking.
Archive would be on the path of the Jester. And if you haven't read Stormlight, well, you need to
You're
read
wrong.
it.
It's his
You're wrong.
mentor. Yes.
I have not.
Anyway, great character in that series. It's a little side quest there. My path would be the path of the Tideweaver. So this path focuses with the manipulation of water, and techniques would be centered around that. And the reason that is because I would use it more as a defense technique, or something that is adaptable that I can use as either both offensive or defensive techniques and capabilities. water is versatile. I can use, like I said, I can use it to be defensive or offensive. And I think one of my techniques that I would use would be like a waveform shielding, I would call it, a defensive barrier of water that can absorb or deflect incoming attacks. As an offensive one, I would use the cascading spear, a long-range attack that channels water into like a spear-like projectile and to throw at my enemies.
Okay, so a waterbender.
A waterbender, but in Cradle.
Sort of if Kaladin was an archer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jonathan, what about you? What would be your path?
Yeah.
They sort of talked about it, that rough drafts, but
Yes, my rough draft of a path. Thank you for the uplifting words there, Casey. That was very nice. Thank you.
Always here to help.
Yes, I've noticed. Slava and I came up with this question in one of the earlier episodes, but we'll give them a quick refresher. So my path was the path of the ever-expanding horizon, where I focus on growth and adaptability and vision, and it's a highly strategic path. I see opportunities in any situation. These folks are also renowned for their resilience and innovation. I actually just asked ChatGPT to, fluff me up, make me feel good about myself. So that's what it did.
cheat.
It's not cheating. It requires
Cheat
my
GPT.
cheat. Okay. get outta here.
Honestly, you should just have the path of GPT because that should be your path.
No. Nope. But I'll take that and I'll use my insightful gaze on you. And it's a foundations technique that allows me to see the threads of potential scenarios like Matt making fun of me or trying to take over my podcast and spotting strengths and weaknesses in those areas for improvements in both people and environments.
Okay, so we got a sorcerer. We're really rounding out the party now. Yep. To keep things D&D. Yep.
Slava?
Yeah. And to remind the audience of what mine was, mine is the path of the mind's eye. This is a unique cultivation journey focused on insight, heightened awareness, and a deep perceptual acuity. Practitioners seek to understand the world around them on a level that goes beyond sight, honing their senses to perceive hidden layers, anticipate outcomes like Matt being a better co-host, and connect.
Yes! Shots fired. It's about time somebody called him out on that. He doesn't show up for most of the episodes, and that's part of the reason he's not a good co-host.
Hey, quality over quantity, Jonathan. You'll learn.
Okay.
And then to my friends here and to some of the audience who's been with us for a while, and connect seemingly unrelated elements. Because you guys know sometimes I talk in what I call circles or arcs to bring it back to the original point and get lost along the way sometimes. But my path possesses the Forger's Flame. It's an inner spark that allows me to turn perception into creation.
Or, put in English terms, it allows him to get angry when things don't go his way. Please go back. Please revisit the episode where Spencer led us through moderation in episode 99, and I talked about how Slava gets upset at everything, but we cut that out of the episodes to spare you.
Did we, though? I kept some of it in.
Oh, okay.
What would be your Underlord revelation then?
Let me bring up my notes here because I wrote down some stuff. So, JT, I think it would center around like deeper truths of how I perceive the world and myself. Each time I advance, there would be an insight in how I would unlock more potential powers by reconciling my analytical and perceptive nature with the more emotional, intuitive sides of my personality. Because this path, the way I wrote it is based on like my work, like digital strategy, research. So I wanted to keep everything kind of together with my real life and this fake life that I'm doing this podcast.
Boring.
Yeah.
Lame.
Sounds like a ranger to me.
Matt, what would be yours?
My revelation, I got my notes here. Let's see. My Underlord revelation is commitment. Basically, realizing that there's no more towing the line between rebel and normie, like the typical edgelords kind of do. They're always
towing that line, being just in that gray area, and just dive straight off the edge into being either complete darkness or just going back to normie status. But it typically falls on that embodiment of darkness, kind of like how Mercy's kind of abilities are very shadowy, tendrily kind of darkness. Basically, nobody understands me, and this is just the way I like it.
Sounds like your character broods in a corner all day.
All day.
Probably
with
does.
my hair covering one eye.
Yes, very emo of you. Also, very
Yes.
apt for Slava's kickback that you lack co-host traits, because you need to get Underlord, you have to address your commitment issues. So that's good.
The grudging continues.
I assume that the path of the Tideweaver has something to do with water. The
He has to-
revelation.
he's constantly dehydrated, and so his Underlord revelation is, I gotta drink more water.
I need more water in my
He needs to go with the
Water
flow,
is
man.
life.
Yeah, so my Underlord revelation would involve water. Sorry.
Bottled or distilled?
Wow. Mineral, actually, mineral
it.
water.
Mineral water.
Yeah. I would pull the metals from the water and use those too. No,
Okay, Magneto.
right.
Starts to drink heavy water.
Mine would involve actually overcoming a fear of failure and having to understand that failure in certain instances is okay. I'm not going to be able to be perfect at everything, and I know it's crazy. But I think the path of the Tideweaver, the duality of water, that path would help me understand that it's okay to fail every once in a while, that I don't have to be perfect, that I can pick myself up and keep moving forward. As Jonathan likes to quote, the most important step a man can take is always the next one.
Mm-hmm. So basically, your revelation is that you don't get to control all things, and so you just have to let water wash over you.
Be like water.
Exactly.
Go with the flow, man.
water off a duck's back.
That's very wuxia.
Yes, water off and his spirit animal is a duck. He doesn't get a dross, he gets a duck.
I get it.
There's your ranger, Matt, right here.
It has to be a duck because a
rogue.
geese would be too aggressive.
That's true. Geese are annoying, and
That's why they're rogue. They got the
they-
sneak attack going on.
they deserve to be shot.
I
Guess-
apologize on behalf of the SideQuest podcast to all our Canadian listeners. Your state bird is valued.
Casey, what's yours?
I'd say, going with the theme of the Abyssal Maw being, consumption, food, that the Underlord revelation draws upon what the individual's hunger, what they truly hunger for, not just, food or drink, what drives them, what pulls at them, what they're doing all this for, what they really at their gut feeling want out of life.
So your revelation and the thing stopping you is a tummy ache?
Sushi.
No, it's more like,
Gut
there's
hunger.
a gaping hole in my stomach that I can't fill with food.
One gas station sushi away from a life-ending alteration.
No, the gas station sushi doesn't
Week-old
cause
hot
that.
dogs?
Actually, that introduces impurities into the body. That needs to be purged out.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey, man, I don't make the rules. I just eat them.
I was about to come
Apparently.
up. I don't
You
know. if
just did.
Make the rules.
I came up with a segue. I don't know if it might be going a little too far.
Now do it.
Say it.
Yeah, I'm always worried when you say stuff like that.
As long as it includes the sound.
Speaking to somebody with a hole in their stomach, Jonathan.
Wow. Wow.
Man, I love it.
That better make it in.
That's good. That's good.
Oh man,
well, it
That is
lines
very
up.
befitting your path too, JT. Very befitting your
man.
path. Vicious mockery.
My
Yes.
goodness, that's
2d4,
great.
2d6 damage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take 2d6 mental
Whip over
damage.
here.
See you on the next podcast. Never.
So that actually lines up with the Underlord revelation or challenge that needs to take place for the ever expanding horizon, which is acknowledging my limitations and insecurities without letting them shake my foundation. Only by fully embracing my current self and potential can I leap beyond the current horizon. So thank you, JT, for embarrassing me in front of the internet. It's very good. Thank you.
He's very good at that.
Yeah. Which leads into mine, which is finding a joke that will make even your greatest enemy laugh.
Are we Nemesis? Is it?
After that joke, probably. It was up to you.
Perfect.
All right.
Well,
That's it.
All right.
So
What about
going
weaknesses?
on to weaknesses? Jinx, you may say.
The weakness of mine, tough crowds. Unfunny people are the bane of my existence, both in my path and in real life.
You would be the bane of my existence as a path, JT, because your abilities are my weakness, which is harsh words. I take everything to the soul, basically. And I wrote this, and I thought it was kind of funny. And if people know who Black Veil Brides is, they'll get this. The most self-destructive sacred art has very little regard for self-preservation in combat, always goes all out, balls to the walls, easily shaken by sharp words and even sharper knives and pens.
Nice.
So basically, if one of your guys goes off into his long, edge-filled rant, all he has to say is cringe.
Yep. And then he loses his mind.
So basically, the villain would just have to start monologuing harsh words, and then you would be done for.
It depends on the monologue. If it's targeted towards me, yes, it'd be game over. But if it's just a monologue, it's just a monologue.
You're gonna sit there and listen to it?
Yes.
Not very edgelord of you.
Because basically a monologue that doesn't attack
So similar
with
to this.
words, it's basically it's basically just the big bad evil guy brooding, which is what I do for a living. So I will just brood with him and brood harder.
It sounds kind of sexual in nature, and we don't do that on this podcast.
There's
Yeah.
lots of tension.
For how many times we said we don't do that on this podcast? We've done that a lot of times on this podcast. Slava, what would be the weakness on your path?
It would be sensory overload, because since I'm taking everything in all at once and processing it, probably at certain points in the path, I would hit walls where I couldn't process everything all at once and be confused or start hallucinating and losing my mind slowly.
Hallucinating. Okay.
So regular Tuesday afternoon.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
And Jonathan, you tell us your weakness.
It will come to no surprise for those who know me well. My path is prone to overthinking and can lead to mental fatigue, crisis, and high-stakes situations. Additionally, and this is my actually favorite weakness of mine, my allies rely too much on me, and if I'm taken out
You
of
want
the
a
fight,
slice of humble pie?
I actually brought 2 of those for myself because I'm the most humble. So if I'm removed from the equation, they usually, they're too dependent on me and they crumble.
This is the equivalent of Moses in the Bible writing, and I was the most humble man on earth.
I wrote that, actually. You can't just call me Moses.
Just call me Moses.
Moishe over here.
Moishe.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm the last person to state weakness here. I don't think I ever actually covered mine. Basically, because of how their cultivation works, they're just extremely slow. They put themselves down at a point and turn that into a defensible position, or, using their techniques, they draw people into, grappling range, but they're terrible at chasing things or escaping.
So you're a dwarf.
Once they've set themselves down, they're basically stuck there for the fight.
To quote Gimli, very dangerous over short distances.
Exactly.
We dwarves are not natural sprinters.
No, we are natural
Or
sprinters.
we are natural sprinters.
Short distances, most dangerous.
That's funny.
That covers it. Matt, you want to do the next section?
All right. So now that we've done with the weaknesses and had that fun little conversation, how would you guys describe the book basically, or the series as a whole to the audience here?
I would say it's a hero's journey full of anti-heroes.
Took the words out of his mouth.
Hot dog, man! I tell you what, emotional, fast-paced struggle growth. Mic drop.
For the audience, they basically just copped each other's notes, looking at each other's textbooks here.
Oh,
Bro, what would you call it?
That's funny.
Man, I would have put, basically it's Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z, but the original series.
Dragon Ball. Okay.
One season condensed into one book.
Lyndon doesn't have a tail though.
He doesn't need a tail. He burned it off.
Goku loses it in that series anyway.
Yeah. How many times does he lose it?
Several.
Yeah. I'm not counting.
Spencer, what about you?
I would say this book is a hero's journey.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to popcorn it for
Really
somebody
emotional
else
and
instead?
It's
I'm sorry, I
some
had the
That's
great
it. That's
short
all.
word
That's all I
description.
got. That's all I got, guys.
He would say it's
Hero's
Journey into the
Hero's
West.
Journey. Yeah.
Yes, a journey into the West.
Journey to-
A hero's journey to his path. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling, guys.
Do you want me to popcorn it to Jonathan instead? You give me some more
Maybe.
time?
No, a hero's path to figuring out how to become a better version of himself.
So a hero's journey.
Yes, hero's journey.
Into the West.
Excellent.
Into the
From the east to the west.
Sorry, guys, that's all I got.
Jonathan?
I'm just here to make Matt laugh.
Ugh.
He's having
Well-
some trouble breathing over there.
Mission accomplished.
If I can't use my previous description that I corrected Matt on earlier and how I describe it to people, which is Dragon Ball Z in literature form, not space.
You said space.
I did not say space.
You dirty liar.
I'm not dirty. I took a shower.
You clean liar.
So apparently you're still a liar.
He didn't defend the liar. He didn't defend the liar
I don't
point.
have to. I'm telling the truth. Believe me. We've derailed here. I would describe this book as a look at oneself. Gratitude.
How about you, Jeremy?
I described it as, come on, Lyndon, in and out, 20-minute adventure. I liked it, and actually I think that, no, maybe not. I was going to go right into the how do you rate the book, but we put that later.
You could go into it. That's fine.
Okay, so I think that the Nightwheel Valley section is fantastic, and the one nitpick I have of it is I felt that it was a little too short. Maybe that's because I'm used to these massive 3,000 chapter series, but I would have liked to have seen Nightwheel Valley sort of expounded on, more details put into the setting, because essentially all we got was, oh, it's dark here, and then the two forces are fighting, and then there's a vault somewhere. Whereas you could have a really good miniature world that has its own rules and perhaps even more interesting stuff in it, where they go around and they're collecting and they're looking for the potential opportunities while also competing with everybody else.
So you want to read Ghostwater a second time?
Yes.
That's basically what Ghostwater is.
Yeah. Except instead of it being just a couple of people that are in there, it's, much larger forces, and there's, a background of conflicts going on between two sides.
We replaced the water with darkness. Brilliant, Will. Brilliant.
Dark water.
Gray water.
Oh, gross.
Ghost dark.
Ghost dark.
All right, boys. What's the rating? World, characters, plot, 1 to 5. Underlord. We'll do quick round robin.
Characters, I'll give a 5. Plot, I'll give a 4. World, I'll give a 5.
That's about what I would give as well. 5 for the world, 5 for the characters, 4 for the plot.
I would go 5 for the world, just because we did change scenery quite a bit in this book specifically. Characters, I would also put, characters I'd put at a 4, even though the character part was my favorite part with Orthos. And then plot, I think, is 5. I think they moved this along to the next stage of this series very, very well and very, very succinctly.
I put it at 4 for the world, 5 for the characters, 5 for the plot. Like I said, I wanted more.
I'm with JT. I think that the world actually was a little thin this time around. 4 for the world, 5 for the characters, 5 for the plot.
I'll keep my ratings of 5 all around from the previous episode. I enjoyed the world. The plot was one of my favorite plots out of all the books so far. And the characters, well, I just like the characters from starting from book 1. So 5 all around.
You hated Lindon at the start.
I changed my
Get
mind
called out.
in retrospect.
Casey, if you know nothing about me, just remember the Warbreaker episode.
Yeah, I remember one pretty vividly.
I'm just here to keep us on the straight and narrow.
I was there.
My house of lies.
House of lies. You live upon a throne of lies.
It's true.
You smell like beef and cheese.
Also true.
I didn't need to know that last part.
That's from Elf. I just followed up the quote that you just said. You said on a throne of lies, you smell like beef and cheese.
He missed it. He missed it.
I guess so. He's not Drax.
Apparently. JT, you dropped a question in this next section about mythology, thinking, and writing. Did you want to give us a quick rundown of that?
Sure. So in original genre, the Xianxia genre, they, I think I mentioned this earlier, don't have a huge amount of detail around the physics and the way that the world works. People will move insane distances, hundreds of kilometers within a few seconds quite easily. They never think, though, to go to the sun or the moon. And in fact, they sort of think of these as magical celestial objects rather than real physical things that exist. Space itself isn't real. It's more of a metaphysical barrier that you're fighting against. It's a very ancient style of writing, an ancient style of thinking of the world. And that's why I mentioned it and said it's more of a mythological perspective. And they suffuse that throughout the entirety of their text. So you're thinking flat Earth, you're relying on a lot of mystery in explanation. And that's the love-hate I had for the aura that we used in this book. When you go to Underlord, you have to be surrounded by the aura that you need for your path. Wasn't that correct?
Yeah, you need a high density of aura to do it quickly, but you also the sacred objects need to be in line with your path, which is why Lindon is like, well, I could wander around looking for stuff that will work for me, or I will just use the things that I've brought.
I felt that was nice in the sense that it feels kind of odd and totally arbitrary, which is very cultivation novel. I felt it wasn't particularly well fleshed out. It was one of the weaknesses I saw in this. Right? It didn't seem to have a through line. Why do you need treasures? Why do they disappear?
My understanding of it is it's like you're slurping in the power to get that upgrade. That's my understanding.
You're consuming experience points.
Yes, experience points. Oh boy, because I like the hot takes. It's fun to do those. What kind of armchair authorship do you guys have about this book? Since we're kind of talking about it with JT's comment about not enough of a through line or explanation of, well, why do the artifacts need to be absorbed? Or do you need them to be in your path?
I would have liked a little bit more, and this is something I gripe on for the whole series, is they take the first book and the whole sequence with Serial and all that stuff, and then you just see her in these tiny little snippets, and then they introduce the Abaddon and these tiny little snippets, and it's not enough to intrigue me. So every time he cuts to that now at this point in the series, I'm just kind of like, all right, I tune out a little bit. I just kind of forget about it. It just doesn't interest me. There's not enough interest for me in there. So I really wish he would flesh out that a little bit more earlier on in the series, so that way it would be a little bit more meaningful later on down the line.
I get your point because I ended up in the same sections going, it's like, cool, I am interested in Serial, but I'm in a tense moment with Lindon right now.
Right.
I don't want to deviate for a moment. I want to see what's happening with him.
And it's interesting how he writes it too. It's like information report. Like he's basically talking to a computer, which I think that's a cool way to write these sequences in certain points, but it's still it just doesn't intrigue me. That's honestly my heaviest gripe with the entire series as a whole is that facet.
Interesting.
I think mine is a little bit similar, but in more aspects of the book. So I think, Jonathan, you kind of said this earlier too, about you wanted to see maybe more of the Nightwheel Valley, or maybe I don't remember who said that, but there's a lot of spots where I feel like Will should have slowed the writing down just a little bit to spend a little bit more time in certain areas or with certain characters, just to see them grow as a character more, or just spend a little bit more time in certain areas. And I think for me, it moves almost a little too quickly, and I feel like I don't get enough of them learning how to use their abilities and their powers, or even spending time with each other and growing in relationship. That would be my gripe.
Go along with the fact that Yerin's blood shadow goes from, being this thing that we don't know about for the first couple of books to being a threat to her. And now we finally have, her developing it alongside of her blade path. But it goes so fast. It is a single book, and it basically goes from, okay, here's this blood shadow that you've just, wrested some control over. Okay, now it's helping you. Now you're fully in sync with it. And I feel like there should have been a little more either focus on that during, moments with her, because we did have some of that in the book itself. And I thought that was interesting, where she was facing down the demon that's basically stuck in her. But it felt too fast. I'm not sure, because I haven't read the rest of it, if we're going to see more of that in the future, of her getting more control.
I think mine would be Yerin's near-death experience. The more I thought about it, I think it would have been better if there was a few more pages dedicated to it, fleshing out the tension there, and maybe a little bit more of the tension I mentioned that she's now feeling towards Lindon. I think that would have added a lot more to the story for me. But I get it. It's a fast-paced book. You want to introduce a problem. You want to get over it quickly and move on to the next thing.
Right.
And I liked that section of the book a lot.
Well, that covers mine then, because I've said that a few times already. And this just goes to two things. I think it's Will's writing style, and I also think it's something that he's getting better at, because I don't know if any of you guys have read the newest series he's working on called The Last Horizon. He has stronger scenes and moments for his characters and making them go through emotional arcs instead of just rushing through it. And I think it's just the development and growth of him as an author. If I was to choose like 80-20, 20% the style that he used for specifically Cradle and trying to stay true to the genre, but also like growing into it, and 80% like learning how to give his characters moments of emotional growth. Not to go back to Sanderson all the time, but like if you've read Elantris, you know exactly like, oh, this is clearly this person's first published novel. Not bad. I've never published a book, like props to you. But then you read something later, like a decade later, and you're like, oh, he's gotten heaps better. And that only comes through doing reps by writing. Well, let's wind this episode down here, guys. I really appreciate having all of you on and discussing Underlord and Cradle. And, we're only halfway through the series. So we've got 6 more times where you boys are going to come back on and harass me.
Always a pleasure.
That's my favorite part of the podcast, is harassing Jonathan.
The harassment will continue until morale improves.
Until morale improves?
It's very militaristic.
I never said your morale.
Great. This is great. One last question before we go on the outro. Did you guys read the bloopers? Do you have a favorite blooper?
I don't remember the bloopers.
I know Casey did.
Yeah, I read the bloopers, but I forget at the moment. I remember the blooper from the last one where she tries to do the trick off the tree and then snaps her neck. Oh, right. There was the one where, Lindon is already jumping off the edge into the darkness before he can be warned about the death aura. That's my favorite blooper.
I didn't really care for the bloopers in this book too much, but the one that kind of made me chuckle was, I've been thinking about splitting my core again, Lindon said. Ethan raised his eyebrows. You don't think you have enough on your plate as it is? It's strange. Every day I don't split my core, I hear these screams as though thousands of people far away are shrieking in frustration at once. Well, have you tried splitting your core? I have, watch. He sat down and began cycling, according to the Heart of Twin Stars technique. Just as his pure core began to stretch apart, there came a chorus of distant screams. Are all these same voices you've heard before? Ethan asked. No, I think that's an entirely different group of people. You're right, Ethan said. That is strange. Again, it's not very funny, but I like the dark aspect of it, of Lindon having like voices screaming in his head.
Oh wait, that's a joke from the community. Like as he was writing these, there was like two groups of people yelling at the author, say, "You should have Lindon split his core again," and the other group of, "No, you shouldn't."
Oh, that's even better. Now that is funny.
It's basically fourth wall breaking where Lyndon's hearing the
Excellent.
author commentary.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I chose it as my favorite because that makes it even better.
That's pretty good.
Well, I think that's it, guys. Thank you
All
for coming
right.
on. As always, wonderful.
Great to be here. Always great to talk with y'all.
Always a good time. Yeah, always a pleasure to be on the Side Quest podcast, of course.
Spencer's podcast.
Yeah, you guys are always welcome back to Matt and Slava's podcast.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
Matt, I think you're a
Anytime.
little behind on the books that we've read.
Jonathan, I think we're gonna have to cut ties. I don't think this is a good fit.
Wow.
Sorry that you have to hear it like this.
Wow.
Excellent corporate speak.
All over a Zoom meeting too. That's just funny.
It's not
It's
you.
not you,
How
it's me.
2020 appropriate.
Great.
Yeah, this is a good time. Good time.
Just before we leave, I just want to bring in HR so, they can give the rundown to Jonathan and his offboarding.
They're gonna
Okay.
fire off my
Boarding.
joke earlier.
It's formal now.
Oh, man.
Funny.
Matt, go ahead and do the outro then. Just take it.
Before you vanish back to reality, drop us a quick review on your favorite platform. It keeps our quest alive and really helps, other book adventurers find their way here. And book it me.
I will not, especially
No.
when you're firing me for my own
Let me-
podcast.
Before you vanish back to reality, drop us a quick review on your favorite platform. It keeps our quest alive and helps other book adventurers find their way here. And until next time, onward, the dragon advances.
And of course, make sure you take a moment and rate us on your favorite podcast platform and share it with your book loving friends. We'll see you all next time on SideQuest.